Hello and welcome to React without Redux. In this section we'll learn how to get by in React without leaning on Redux. We'll be learning how to use React-Router to support multiple pages in the application that map to a URL. Then we'll be writing some generic React components for general purpose data management. We'll then take a look at managing form data using the final form library, and finally have a peek at the new React Context API. In today's video, we'll be setting up additional pages in our React application using ReactRouter. We'll start by installing ReactRouter and setting it up so that the root URL displays the jokes list. We'll then add a new route that will allow us to view a single joke. In Redux, we often represent the entire state of our application in the Redux store, but routing is one thing that we don't usually rely on Redux for. When it comes to mapping a URL to a screen in a React application, the best known solution is probably ReactRouter. So let's install this as well as ReactRouter DOM. First, let's wire this into our app. We need a couple things from ReactRouter DOM. And then instead of rendering the jokes component directly, we're going to render it inside a route component that maps it to the root URL. So from a user perspective, this should look exactly the same. So I'm currently at the root URL, and it's displaying my jokes component, so we're looking good so far. The next thing that we want to do is turn each joke in this list into a link that will open up a new page displaying the joke. We're going to use the link component from ReactRouter DOM in order to link to another page. So next we're going to style the ReactRouter link a little bit. For starters, we're going to make a joke link component, and that's going to transform an ID into a URL and render a link component. So now instead of this styled div, the joke component can be a styled component that applies styles to our joke link. So here's a feature that we haven't seen yet from styled components, but here's the gist. In addition to native nodes, you can also pass a React component into the styled function, and as long as that component takes a class name or a style property, the styled components library can enhance it. So we just need to make a couple of changes to our style declarations since this is now a link. So this is going to prevent the link from showing up in blue with underlined text as it otherwise would by default. So now we just need to pass the joke ID into our joke component so that it can generate the correct URL path. Okay, I'm pausing here because something doesn't look right, so just give me a minute. You'll be cutting some stuff out here. Okay, so just a couple more quick changes here and we'll be ready. First, we need to write the component that's going to be displayed when we navigate to the joke page. The component's going to be rendered by ReactRouter, and that's going to inject a match property into it. The match object contains lots of useful info, including any parameters that were passed into the URL path. In this case, we have an ID param denoting the joke ID, which will display in an h1 tag. So the next step is to add a route to our new component. So we're going to import the joke component first. And then we're going to render a new route to our joke component where the URL identifies a joke by the ID. We need to rearrange this because the router is only supposed to have one element. So that should be fixed. And as you can see here, when I click on a joke, we transition to a new page that displays the joke ID in an h1 tag. Now, as you can see with ReactRouter, it's really easy to handle the problem of routing without involving Redux at all. However, you might still want to report these navigation events. So before we close out, we can demonstrate how easy it is to do that. We'll do this by using a different router component that gives us control over the history. So we can use the createHistory function to create a browser history object. Then we can use the listen function to execute a callback every time our router executes a change of location. For now, we'll just log the navigation information to the console. Then we have to pass the history object into the router. So now as we navigate, we see the navigation info being logged into the console. So you could really do a number of things from here. You could capture the navigation event and send it to Google Analytics, or you could dispatch it to your Redux store so that your Redux history includes your navigation history. Okay. Alternatively, if you want complete Redux integration with ReactRouter, you can try the react-router-redux library, which fully synchronizes the history with the Redux store. This allows you to dispatch Redux actions that result in a route change.